If United want to sell Mason Greenwood, I think the obvious thing to do is offer him to Juventus in exchange for Matias Soule. And I actually think this deal benefits all parties, particularly if both clubs look to do the price inflation glitch that teams in the Premier League like Chelsea, Aston Villa, Brighton, Newcastle, Forest and Everton have all done recently. See, Mason Greenwood really and truly should be worth about £75 million, but due to the incident rendering a move to another Premier League club as very unlikely, as well as the Spanish and Italian clubs not having the finances to pay the £75 million transfer fee, United will probably have to accept a fee in the region of between £35 and £40 million. But there's two ways that Manchester United could maximise their total revenue for Mason Greenwood, and one involves selling him for a reduced fee of around £20 million this summer that could bring in United as much as £60 to £70 million in the long run. However, I'll start with the one that involves the player I'm going to be talking about in this video, Matias Soule, because conveniently Juventus value him at around €40 million, which is around £35 million. And even if he didn't play for Juventus, I think the 21-year-old Matias Soule is the perfect Michael Olise alternative, which is my answer to the question that someone asked in the Q&A post that I put out a few weeks ago, and I'll be going through those questions over the next few videos. But yes, as a Michael Olise alternative, I'd argue that Matias Soule for around £35 million is a much better deal, although I don't see why Juventus and Manchester United don't just come together and say, look, each player is going to be worth £35 million, but under different circumstances, I don't think you could say that either of these players don't have the ability to potentially be worth 60 or 70 million, certainly Greenwood. And like the Manchester United Academy graduate, Soule is a player that I think has world-class potential. And if you look at some of the other fees that have been paid this summer transfer window, particularly Elliot Anderson from Newcastle to Nottingham Forest for £35 million, surely Juventus and Manchester United can overinflate this transfer fee a bit. But before I come on to how I think you could do this, if you want to pick up any Euro 2024, new season or retro or club international jerseys, go over to Jersey FIFA. You can use code Atlantis at checkout for a discount. A link will be in my Instagram bio, which I will leave linked in the description. So for FFP purposes, if we value both players at £60 million and do the swap deal, this would then allow United to register the £60 million as income for this summer, whilst only writing off £12 million of the £60 million transfer fee, which if I am correct is allowed as you are amortising the cost of the player over the course of his 5-year contract that they sign, which technically should then enable United to report a £48 million FFP profit rather than a £28 million profit if they were to do this without inflating the transfer fee from £35 million. And so in theory that would give United an extra £20 million to spend. And now that's probably not completely right or legal, but Todd Boehly seems to have infinite tricks to stay ahead of FFP and he hasn't been punished for any of them. But if we go back to analysing Soule for now, I think he's a perfect Greenwood replacement and also what you'd have to regard as an Antony upgrade. Antony, I think you have to try one of these crafty inflated swap deals as well, because realistically he's worth about £20 million, but because United paid around £80 million for him, you could surely still value him at around £50 million and get away with it with FFP. Soule is far better than Antony, however, and stylistically, I think he's exactly what United need, and I think you could argue that he has a more complete skill set than Ahmad from the right flank. Firstly, stylistically, Soule is what I'd call a wide playmaker or an inside forward, depending on how much freedom he's given to drift infield between the lines. And when watching him play, it's hard not to see comparisons with James Rodriguez, as like James, Soule's left-footed technique is wonderfully controlled, efficient, but authoritative in its execution. Drifting infield between the lines, Soule can receive the ball, allowing it to roll across his body before turning and driving forward from these positions. His vision and through-ball execution is already at a very high level, and the fact that for his through-ball metric he ranks in the 96th percentile across Europe's top 5 leagues when compared against every other attacking midfielder and winger over the past 365 days shows how high his output is for this kind of pass. But where Soule differs to James is having winger-like acceleration that James just doesn't have anymore at the age he is, with Soule actually kind of resembling Iron Robben in his technique and his ability to be able to cut inside on his left foot. Even the fullback knows what he wants to do, but it's hard to stop him doing it. But Soule is also a multifaceted threat, as just like Michael Olise, Soule is able to create from the half space between the lines in the middle third, from out wide either cutting inside or delivering an in-swing cross, or bursting down the outside into a crossing position closer to the byline, whilst also having a significant goal scoring threat when getting into goal scoring positions around or inside of the box. And we can see this by the fact that this season Soule scored 11 goals and picked up 3 assists whilst on loan at Frosinone from Juventus this season. And he also played an impressive amount of minutes last season, 3,121 minutes, which is almost 3 times what Olise played. And the only real obvious other option as a Michael Olise alternative, essentially also being an Antony upgrade, is Edin Zhegrova of Lille. And when we compare Zhegrova, who played 2,288 minutes in the last 365 days, with Soule, we can see that at this stage of both players' development, Zhegrova is definitely a level above Soule in terms of both his goal scoring and his chance creating output, sitting probably around 20 to 30 percentiles higher in both departments. But whilst Zhegrova sits in this 75th percentile for his XG assisted, it's his passing and his ball progression metrics which really show an interesting perspective, as Zhegrova has a much higher expected assist rate in the 92nd percentile, with both Soule and Zhegrova ranking around the 80th percentile mark for their passes into the penalty area as well. Zhegrova certainly doesn't complete anywhere near as many through balls as Soule, and that's primarily because Zhegrova is a right winger who's going to operate high and wide on the outside of the fullback, and so doesn't drift infield between the lines as much as Soule. However, I think Soule's defensive contribution is a bit better than Zhegrova's, both when applying pressure high up the pitch and just in general having greater tenacity and aggression in defensive duels in the middle third as well. And this does give him a slight edge, particularly in an aggressive pressing system like Ten Hag's, but Zhegrova at this stage in his development is a better ball carrier, and so if Ten Hag specifically wanted a 1v1 specialist, then Zhegrova is probably the better option. However, I definitely think that Soule is a greater goal threat, and I see him in the long run having greater potential than Zhegrova. Soule for me can score 15 goals and pick up 10 assists in the Premier League within the next 2, 3, maybe 4 seasons, having a similar sort of development to Saka and Martinelli. But with Zhegrova, I just don't see him being that sort of winger who will get into double figures goal scoring wise. However, in possession, in terms of progressing the ball through the middle and into the final third, Zhegrova probably functions better in a more possession dominant system, as I don't think he has the directness or the pace of Soule when receiving the ball and quickly driving forward into space, but both players offer multiple ways of progressing the ball forward, either through their dribbling, ball carrying or passing, and are creative and goal scoring threats in the final third as well. And even without the Greenwood swap deal, £30 million plus another 10 million in add-ons maybe, to me seems like a great deal for Matias Soule. But I think Zhegrova, who has 2 years left on his current contract with Lille, could be available for as little as £20 million up front, maybe with another 10 in add-ons. However, I do think Soule's potential makes him worth the extra £10 million, and so as a Michael Olise alternative, an Antony upgrade and maybe a Greenwood swap deal as well, Matias Soule would be my first choice, though I do think Edin Zhegrova is a much better option than Michael Olise would have been, considering he's at least £40 million cheaper and played double the amount of minutes as the Crystal Palace man did last season. So let me know who you would prefer, Matias Soule or Edin Zhegrova, or maybe even someone else coming in on United's right flank in the comments section below.